Hey, you're here with Dr. Jodi, and this is season 4 of Anxiety, I'm So Done With You. This podcast is a teen and a young adult guide to ditching toxic stress and hardwiring your brain for happiness. If you're new here, grab a copy of my book, Anxiety, I'm So Done With You, because this series goes section by section through the book, going a little bit deeper, giving more examples, and telling more stories. In this season, which follows along with Chapter 4, we are finally focusing on you making peace with yourself. Because you can't get rid of anxiety when you're still being your own worst critic. And you know what I mean. You have been your own worst critic. And you don't deserve that. You deserve kindness, compassion, and forgiveness. And in this season, I'm going to give you the practical tools on how to do that with yourself. Thank you so much for listening, subscribing, and leaving me 5 stars on Apple Podcasts. Please spread the word about this book and series because mental health problems have dire consequences that cause more and more pain to young people, their families, and their communities. And I need you to help me turn the tide by sharing these tips for embracing self-love. Welcome to Chapter 4, Section 1, Embrace Making Meaning. This episode is going to be a good one. In fact, I think this whole season is going to be awesome. And if nothing else, it will be relieving because guilt and shame and negative self-blame account for almost all of your suffering. In this episode, we're going to talk about humans' need for order. We'll go over how we get it when we desperately need it and how it influences our meaning-making in very negative ways. And then I'm going to share with you how you can consistently make meaning of events from your past in a way that heals your mind, body, and soul. Ready? Let's get started with fear. There is a point to the sensation of fear. You feel the emotion of fear in order to call your attention to something. But once your attention is there, your decision-making takes over and you decide what action you're going to take next. At that point, when that mind takes over, there is no more need for the emotion of fear. Well, guilt is the same way. There's a similar purpose. You feel the emotion of guilt in order to call your attention to something. And from there, what is supposed to happen is your mind is supposed to take over so you can decide what it is you want to do to respond and then do it. Once you are onto the decision-making and action-taking, the guilt itself is no longer needed. If this emotional regulation system went smoothly, that would be great. We would do the tasks that we wanted to restore relationships or repair any damage, and we'd commit to being better the next time. However, it doesn't always work that well, especially if we're already thinking negatively about ourselves. The guilt and the shame and the blame get stuck in our consciousness, snowballing the past stories of similar feelings and worrying us that everyone will know how bad we are. Not only are we suffering from the overthinking and rumination of these self-blame narratives, but we can get immobilized by them, so stuck in the more and more overwhelming feelings of guilt. Which is like a double whammy, because we keep those overwhelming feelings of guilt and we have weakened relationships. In the book, I share my favorite antidote that illustrates the mechanisms that increase our guilt and shame and blame. I'm going to share it again here to dive deeper into it. First of all, you have to know that humans like order. We crave it because it makes us feel safe and in control. Feelings of powerlessness trigger stress. You know that because we talked about it before. Therefore, when we're under stress, we crave order more. In other words, the more stressed we are or anxious we are or sad we are, the more we crave safety and control. In the book, I use an example of humans' response to chaos to help illustrate this concept. Nature is chaotic. If you were to stand in a forest, you'd see that there is no order to the angle that the trees grow, or the balance of lush branches versus sparse ones. or the sizes of the trunks, or where plants grow and where they fail to grow, and the height and shape of the underbrush, all of it. There are reasons for all of these, but there's not a crystalline structure to the forest. We experience it as chaotic. If I were to leave you in that same forest, sitting under a tree for a few hours all by yourself and asked you to stay put until I returned, I would probably come back to find you have implemented some order in your small space. You might have created a soft pile of moss to sit on, or you lined up different rocks in a pattern, or you kept yourself busy braiding small branches or tall grasses. Unless you were a seasoned meditator or maybe had fallen asleep somehow, it would be really hard to do nothing while you're sitting idly in that chaos. Your mind would be looking for something to do. If you're an overthinker, or if you have a history of negative thinking, which is pretty much all of us, these few hours of forced stillness would instigate worry, frustration, and loneliness. Order, or elements of order, help you feel empowered. Making a game with sticks and rocks, digging a hole, or decorating your small area would give you something to do, which is experienced as empowerment or reclaiming order. When you do those things, you're connected with your agency and authority in that situation, even though there are limits on you. In life, there are always limits anyway. You have limits on your energy, your time, and your money. There are rules that limit you. Accessibility can limit you. Lack of skills or other people's boundaries can also restrict you. Anxiety wants you to see the powerlessness in these limits so you stay focused on feeling vulnerable. However, there's an unlimited amount of things that you could do within those limits. For example, if you have, on average, 16 hours a day awake, you could sleep less and add a little bit to that, but you can't add onto the 24 hours that you have in a day. However, within the time that you are awake, there are countless decisions, choices, and abilities on how to use that time, even when you have some obligations for some of it. And you could get frustrated by the limits that you have in your life, which will soak up more energy, or you could focus on what you have control over, and then that attention will open more space and energy for more choices during the time that you have. Okay, back to humans craving order. Bad or difficult situations are chaotic, and this makes them nonsensical. When you go through them, your mind, senses, and emotions are overwhelmed and so quickly and desperately want to restore order. The disorder is uncomfortable, and that discomfort is on top of the situation being painful, scary, or disturbing. So you're having a response to the crisis and then a response to the discomfort of the chaos of the crisis. To handle this, humans reach for and grab order as fast as possible from wherever they can get it. The problem is that the fastest way to achieve order is blame. When there's a problem, the first question is, why is this happening? Because not knowing feels more out of control than anything else, and blame answers this question. Honestly, a lot of times this blaming helps. For example, when you say people aren't mean because they don't like you, they're mean because they don't like themselves. It helps you see that meanness is the other person's problem rather than a you problem. When you understand that, you don't take their name calling or criticisms to heart, giving that person less power over how you think about yourself. So blame is sometimes a good thing. Unfortunately, when a person is young and isolated, for example, if a child's caregiver abuses them, self-blame is the quickest way for them to make sense of what is happening. That's why so many people who experience trauma blame themselves for it when it was not even close to their fault. Kids who were abused were in the wrong place at the wrong time and don't even remotely deserve what happened to them. Blaming oneself, though, is the quickest way to make sense because blaming the caregiver doesn't make sense in that context. Caregivers are supposed to care, and they may even be trying to convince the child that they're doing whatever they're doing because they care. Heartbreaking as it might be, this is why self-blame feels like an easier path to order. But as you can imagine, this doesn't satisfy for very long because self-blame also feels out of control. People don't even know what they did to cause it, and so they have to figure that out by listing negative things about themselves. Then they have to figure out why they're such a mess in the first place, and chaos ensues. I'm telling you this because you can consciously change course if you recognize that this is what's happening. Let me give you another example. If someone was mean to you, you might say to yourself, they did this thing, they are terrible. More often than not, it doesn't end there. Because as a human being, your mind keeps questioning the meaning and starts to second guess itself. Instead of you saying, I already decided that that person's terrible, so I don't need you to question anymore, thanks anyway, when the mind keeps questioning, you actually comply and think, that doesn't make sense. Why would someone do that, especially someone who I trusted? Maybe I'm overreacting, or maybe I caused it somehow. And then immediately that thought makes you feel bad about yourself because literally you're judging yourself. And it's not over yet because next you feel the urge to defend yourself against yourself. Subsequently, you would then have to stand up to your defense, especially because shame is still wreaking havoc. You wonder, maybe it was my fault. At this point, your mind begins to teeter-totter, going back and forth between, was it me? Was it him? Was it me? Was it him? Thus causing more chaos and determination to solve an unsolvable problem. And I'm calling it unsolvable since it's now so convoluted and expanded with blame narratives, negative self-judgments, and worries that it's hard to distinguish the whole thing from the original event. I call this was it me, was it him back and forth, the blame game. While it's an attempt to get order, it only causes more chaos, stress, and anxiety. Listen, continuing to question, doubt, blame oneself, and beat oneself up after a bad experience is one of the biggest sources of emotional turmoil that I have witnessed. People know that they are suffering, but they're unaware that this is the process happening behind the scenes. Once I point it out, they're like, yes, that is exactly what I'm doing. It feels chaotic, but also it feels safe in a way. It's a suffering that is familiar, and the figuring it all out feels like an action that you are doing to keep yourself safe. The false thinking that it is keeping you safe makes it hard to let go of the blame game, but it's not keeping you safe. It is causing more stress. Are you relating to any of this? I want to read to you a section of the book. I know you just read it, but anxiety and negative judgments repeat themselves all day long. So I want to repeat this part at least one more time. To compound the suffering further, there is an additional layer of negative self-judgment. If one believes they had done something wrong but doesn't know what it was, they will further blame themselves for not knowing what they did. This incites a fear that they will not be able to prevent it from happening again in the future. Also, because they, quote, allowed it, they sometimes feel like they deserve to feel bad, so they don't try to feel better. Or they decide that they need to work harder to deserve to feel better. So they might try to please everyone, try to figure out the problem, overwork to prove their worth, accept blame from others, over-apologize, or attempt to protect themselves by isolating themselves. Like running on a hamster wheel, these take huge effort with no results, conjuring even more blame because people can't get better. Plus, people blame themselves even through mild chaos. That, combined with our sense of inadequacy from unrealistic standards, is why guilt and shame are so overwhelmingly present in modern culture. These ultra-damaging emotions are the hallmark of self-contempt. I've seen them cause self-hatred, self-abuse, intrusive thoughts, intense panic, devastating depression, overworking, addiction, isolation, and so much more. If you relate to this, you're starting to understand why I say that internalized mental illness is not the problem that we're facing. The human experience in the context of our modern world causes our emotional turmoil. This means it is completely understandable how you are feeling. Also, instead of questioning why you are suffering, thinking that you're just wired this way, or believing that you are different because you have a mental illness, this knowledge allows you to focus all of your energy on getting better. When I'm referring to modern culture, I'm acknowledging that there are a few things that sets apart today's world from past societies, like individualism, phone use, and an increase in idle time, meaning that there are fewer chores that people need to do to survive. Individualism, phone use, and idle time both cause trauma to the human psyche and also increase our trauma reaction when something bad happens. If this information causes you to worry, don't worry. During the season, I'm going to give you practical tips to resolve it. But first, I wanted to invite you into the power role over what is happening by understanding the mechanisms at work. With this insight, you can decide what to believe and what to reject. Also, once you're aware, you can override any monkey mind tactic that doesn't serve you. In the What's in Your Hand activity of this section, I share how to make meaning in a healing and calming way rather than creating more chaos. Read that section again because in it I tell you why bad things happen. It's pretty straightforward, but the questioning mind is unsatisfied with simplicity. It has all kinds of excuses for rejecting that simplicity, especially when something was awful, because it feels like you're not acknowledging how horrible that it was. What you need to do is separate the why it happened from whether it was okay or not. For example, people are limited. They hurt other people. It is that simple, but in no way does this mean you deserved it because you didn't deserve it at all. I would never try to make you accept simplicity that would invalidate you. Instead, accept this simplicity because it's true. People hurt people. They shouldn't, but they do. It's not fair. It is not okay, but they do. Here's the script that I want you to say to yourself. It happened. It wasn't okay. I did not deserve it, but it doesn't have to define me. It happened. It is not okay that it happened. I did not deserve it, but it doesn't have to define me. Let's unpack that. The first part, it happened, validates you. This has to be included because many people who go through a traumatic or difficult event question whether it happened or not. Maybe no one's told you that this is common and you think you're the only one who thinks like this. Unfortunately, if you think you are unique in thinking this, you give it more meaning. I must think that it didn't happen because maybe it didn't happen. It helps once you decide once and for all that it did happen. And then you could choose not to entertain any more doubts about whether it happened or if you are exaggerating. No, it happened. Next, saying it wasn't okay and you did not deserve it settles the blame game. It restores your sense of worth because you need that. People often resist healing because they think that recovery means it's okay that someone did something terrible. Staying suffering because the other person doesn't deserve to get away with it is like drinking poison and waiting for that other person to die. You deserve to heal, and that is all that matters. Not healing just gives the person who hurt you continuous power over you. Get your ruby slippers back, please, and decide that it wasn't okay and you did not deserve it. Lastly, you say that it doesn't have to define you. Did you ever hear that quotation, don't define yourself by other people's limitations? You could think of yourself as a victim, or you could think of yourself as a mess because of what happened to you. Or you could think of yourself as a survivor for being a good person despite what you went through. Remember I told you that when you have a dominant problem story in your life, you too often take what's wrong into your sense of who you are. I am anxious, or I am a loser. It becomes your very identity. But reminding yourself and taking a stand that the experience does not have to define you takes it back out of your identity. It leaves you able to define yourself by your positive attributes like caring, considerate, funny, or smart. If you have had significant trauma, you might need a counselor to help you go through this restoring process of what happened. I don't recommend any of you do this alone. Please find a trusted adult to witness and love you through the healing journey. People don't heal in a vacuum, so stop trying to heal yourself in isolation and then beat yourself up when it doesn't work. Humans are social beings, not individualistic beings. People need people. You need people. Now, after you do this process, your mind will still question because that is what a mind does. Knowing that that's what's going to happen can prepare you for it. Instead of getting upset that you didn't heal right, you can say, hey, self-doubt, I knew you'd question again. I've decided and I don't need you anymore. Just have a seat. I'm busy right now. Sound familiar? You are acknowledging but emotionally unattached to the doubt, so you're not feeding it any of your precious energy or attention. After you say this to yourself, please move on to an active task as soon as you can. Hey, self-doubt, I knew you'd question again. I've decided and I don't need you anymore. Just have a seat. I'm busy right now. Got it? Good. This is easy, but it might feel silly or a bit unfamiliar at first. That might feel uncontrolled. Keep practicing anyway. Lean into the discomfort because I promise it is safe. And it is actually very controlled. After practicing for a short time, you will feel more in control than you have felt in a very long time. Plus, this is sustainable control that lasts and lasts. Thank you so much for listening to Anxiety. I'm so done with you. With me, Dr. Jodi. In this episode, you learned that when meaning making is left to the monkey mind, it causes more chaos via the blame game. To help, I taught you a script for making meaning after a challenging event. We're going to go into more examples of meaning making in future episodes, going deeper on how to embrace that practice. I appreciate your subscribing, commenting, and leaving me 5 stars on Apple Podcasts. As always, there's a link in the show notes to the blog post that goes with this episode that has the transcription and more resources for healing your brain, body, and spirit. Plus, you could come on hang out with me on YouTube and TikTok at Dr. Jodi. In the next episode, we'll cover Chapter 4, Section 2, Embrace Letting Go, where I teach you the 3-step process for releasing anything that you don't want. Read or listen to that, and I'll see you there.